Thanks for joining us on another episode of So What's Next? I'm your host, Jeremy Medor.
And I'm your co-host, Kristen Smith.
And I'm the guest, Katie Weldon, also known as Coach Katie and Katie the Mortgage Lady.
I'm so happy to have you on today. I know that we are going to get involved in a phenomenal conversation. I just don't know what that is yet.
Yeah, can't wait.
But no, we were talking off camera about fear and not letting it paralyze you. And you're one of the people in my, I think, ever expanding, but still limited circle who I look at and say, that woman's not afraid of anything.
I wouldn't go that far.
Well, I mean, I think that we all have our fears that we don't talk about, right? But the truth of the matter is I have admired how you've built your life over the time that I've known you. And I've only started to come to get to know you a bit better over the past few years since you started moving and shaking. Yeah. So I admire that. And
thank you.
That's one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to have you on the show is because as we were talking like off camera, I want to spend more time having quality conversations, talking about true challenges, true growth strategies that we've experienced, problems that we've overcome, and ripping off Band-Aids everywhere we go, kind of thing. You know what I mean? And that it's important to me to surround myself with people that embrace that whole concept.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise you're just waiting your turn all the time. And nobody gives people turns. You got to take it. And that only really favors the people that are willing to take those risks and show their vulnerability and say, you know what, at the end of the day, even if I failed, I tried.
Absolutely. I think too, the other thing, I used to be afraid of what are other people going to think of this?
Oh my.
And what I realized is it doesn't actually matter. And not from a way that I don't care about other people or what they think. Like, people's opinions are important to me in a way of learning. But at the end of the day, how I feel about myself is really the most important piece.
Correct.
Absolutely.
And so I'm like, I want to just be vulnerable, because there's times when I've asked coaches and I'm going through something big and moving through it, and they're like, make sure you move through it before you post about it. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I love that. And I don't mean that I'm going to be on camera, snots flying, bawling my eyes out. But like, if I'm getting choked up about something and want to share something I'm moving through,
that's okay.
I want to, that's okay. Like, I think if you're really that distraught, like maybe take a minute to sit with it and release what you need to and stuff like that. And there's an importance in maybe not sharing that in the moment, because I don't think that's necessarily what people would need. But I think that for me, I love sharing like where I'm at. I'm
going to challenge you on that.
Yeah, please do.
Just because they don't need it, does that mean that you don't?
True. Yeah. I don't know. That's a great question.
Right. And so I think that we need to ask ourselves, what's this for?
Right.
And for me, this is equal parts sociotherapy.
Okay.
As it is a learning experience for those who choose to watch this. And I think that the largest takeaway that I want to have personally from this is that I got to know someone better. And the secondary takeaway is that through my getting to know someone better, our audience might start taking a look behind the curtain a little bit and reflect on their own lives and see how they are handling the same kinds of situations that you or I or Kristen have encountered and gone through.
So good. I'm actually working on a new program called Behind the Curtain. So it's no coincidence that you said that.
Oh my goodness.
And my goal is to create a women's mastermind. I'm working on it with a woman. Do you know Yun Rhee from Elevated Human Experience? I love Yun. She's amazing. We're working on it and collaborating together. But our goal is to have, let's say, 12 women be part of it. It would be a group program, and we would have everyone sign like a non-disclosure agreement. We want people to really go behind the curtain and be vulnerable at where they're struggling and what they're dealing with, because
this is fully exposed.
Like, you're really, so I also work with this woman. Her name is Maddie Del Maso, and her father, Brian, committed suicide early this year.
I just heard of her.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
Yes,
love her. So I'm part of this community called We Rise, but in the first week of our time together, so she's talking about her journey with God and embracing that in business, but also releasing the shame from things that you're feeling, because we tend to hide behind certain things. You know, It's like, oh, I might share my walking journey, but I'm not going to share my financial journey. Or, oh, I'm going to share my business and like how well my business is doing, but I'm not going to share that I'm struggling in my marriage. Like, so that there's like one thing we're sharing, but this other thing we're hiding and shaming. I'm getting away from the mic here. I don't know if that matters. So I'm back to it. But she actually had us fill out shame cards. And so she had 3 things that were most shameful for. And I'm not willing to share that today because it really did go like deep behind what I was feeling, but I had never acknowledged those 2 things before that time. And so really just putting them on paper, it was like these don't have a hold on me anymore. You know, and we did acknowledge 3 things that we're so proud of in what we've done.
And this is the We Rise?
Yeah, We Rise is her group. Okay. And so it's a monthly subscription, and she hosts weekly meetings, and it has a men's component too. So if you're a woman who's part of it, you can have your spouse part of it as well. If you're a man who's part of it, you can have your spouse or significant other, because she really wants to foster an environment at home where you get away from feeling shame behind everything and talking about it and facilitating these high level, difficult-ish conversations. Go ahead. I can tell you're like, I want to say something so bad.
I want more information.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So we meet weekly, and then there's a men's group who meets weekly or bi-weekly. That's just the men in the group.
So it's men to men and women to women.
Actually, it's everyone to everyone once a week. And then the men's group is every other week, I believe, in addition. And the reason she did that is her circle is more women based. And she wanted the men to be able to be more vulnerable in their own space because they deal with different challenges. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so this is like a monthly subscription. I got in before she really kind of announced it. So it was only $44 a month. I don't know what it is now. I guess it's like $111 or something like that. But it has been so great for my marriage. My husband's really enjoying meeting with the guys because
that's awesome.
When you're on a journey of self-discovery, and I mean, I've invested hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in myself and my journey. It's like, well, my husband hasn't experienced the same thing. So it's like, how does he elevate in his own way without me forcing that, you know?
You and I need to have a lot of talks.
Yeah, we do. We can definitely.
You and I need to have a lot of talks.
People don't talk about this, but when you're elevating, and it's not that he's not elevated with me in a certain way, but he hasn't had access to this.
I'm going to be so bold as to say he isn't being elevated in the same way.
And we internalize it for so long that you think you have it all figured out.
Yeah.
And then when you go to your spouse or significant other, they're like,
they're getting blindsided.
Yeah, they have no idea.
Totally.
And it's not that we intend for that to happen. Wow, this is fantastic.
It's out of love. It's out of love.
So it is.
We love you.
It is out of love, and it's because we are concerned and desire a better outcome for our lives and our relationships. And it extends beyond marriage. I think it extends. I know that it extends beyond marriage because it extends to the team here. It extends to, as a result of the team, it extends to our clients. And as a result of our clients, it extends to the homeowners, right? This is a real trickle down. And who I am as an individual impacts that many people in my extended life.
Absolutely.
Thousands of people.
Yep.
And it's not micro adjustments that only impact me. All those micro adjustments have a cascade effect right on down the line.
100%. Right. And I do want to clarify one thing I said when I said, he's not elevating the same way. Or I said, it's not like he isn't elevating. He is elevated with me.
Yes.
But not like how much movement I've made is so much more drastic than his. Like
correct.
I just
Your delta is different.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And that's what feels so different because
I agree.
We're growing into different people than we were when we first got together.
Yes.
Right.
How
long have you been together?
12 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Jen and I have been together 22 years, married for 20.
Wow. That's amazing.
We're celebrating our 20th this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We've agreed that this is essentially marriage 2.0 for us.
Yep. That's amazing.
And it's difficult because you have to relearn who your spouse is. You have to relearn or undo. You can't undo. You have to relearn why everything that you've done up until this point has been done, positive and negative stuff.
Yeah.
as well as not just learning from those experiences and moving forward by them, but also embracing them as part of you. And the most important part, forgiving yourself for what you didn't see before.
Yeah. And I always say everything happens with purpose. So it's like one of my favorite sayings, not everything happens for a reason, because sometimes it's hard to put a reason onto something, but if everything happens with a purpose, there's just like a greater picture that we can't understand.
Yep.
And I've had people like on podcasts too ask me, you know, what's your biggest regret? And I'm like, I don't have any regrets. And I truly mean that. And I actually did a post about this one time, but what I mean by that is there are things that I would do differently had I been given the opportunity again in a similar situation to approach in a different way. But if it didn't happen, if every single thing didn't happen exactly the way it did, I wouldn't be where I am now.
Yeah.
100%.
I wouldn't be sitting at this table with you had I not been going through what I've done for the past 2 years.
Exactly. Yeah. And people are so focused on all these things they would do differently. Right. Yeah. And it really weighs them down because it's in a way that they're holding on to something that doesn't exist anymore, you know? And when you really look at it, like what would happen, and I urge everyone out there to do this, what would happen if you took those things that you would currently classify as a regret and said, what could the reason this happened be? It could just be the lesson. Could have been a lesson for someone else, actually. Might not have even been your lesson. You know, people have like it going back. I went to UMiami my freshman year of college, then I went to UMass. And sometimes I'm like,
that's a big switch.
It was a big switch. There was financial reasons. Yep. I was really a homebody. I missed my twin sister, my dad, my mom.
Oh, you have a twin sister.
Yeah, I have an identical twin sister and an older sister. So like, I just missed my family.
Yeah.
But there are times where it's like, I wonder what would be different if I had stayed there. But like, I don't see it as a regret. I see it as well, guess what? I moved back to Florida. Like I felt a calling to it. So, and it taught me so many things about who I am by making that switch too. So I bet there's some people who are like, oh, I wish I had never left. That was the biggest mistake I made in my life. I'm using a really simple idea. There's much bigger things, but people just hold on to it like a burning flame that they're just like burning themselves with all the time.
Yep.
Do you think that it is at all helpful to at least temporarily hold on to it so that you can truly savor that feeling of that regret for a short period of time so that you can impress upon yourself the importance of not repeating it?
I'm not sure the answer to that. So I guess...
Do you understand what I'm saying?
A little bit, yeah. So I know what you're saying, because if you don't feel that regret, how do you know that you would have done it differently?
Yeah, it's like not feeling a wound long enough to experience the pain that it brought for the purpose of not making the same mistake to create the wound again.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess if someone's really super aware, I would say acknowledge it. I don't necessarily think people need to feel that wound all the time in order to learn from it.
And to feel that like huge pain.
Yeah.
But use it as a point of growth.
Yeah. So I don't know. I might not be understanding your question.
Yeah. So like if you just take on this persona of don't regret anything and you actively suppress regret from being experienced.
Yes. That would not be good.
There is a danger in that.
Yes. Right? I have evolved so much that I actually don't regret it. Like I'm not just hiding the fact that I regret it. I know what you're saying though. Like if I'm just telling myself like,
no regrets,
I really regret.
Regrets.
Yeah. No regrets and whatever. It's very forced and it comes from a place of shame and inauthenticity. So I actually feel like I've come so far and I realize the bigger picture that everything has, that if I do think for a moment I regret something, I'm like, Katie, you know better. Not that you know better. It's like, you know that this has a bigger impact that you don't understand yet. Yep. And so I think just being aware that there's something I don't know and knowing that the future like is happening exactly the way it's supposed to gives me actual peace. It's not like I'm forcing it down. But if you're feeling like you actually regret it, feel what you need to feel.
So circling back to the whole like snot face, you're just
like snot's flying.
Yeah, you're just running the eyes, etc. Yep. There's a moment for that absolutely has to occur.
100%.
Right? You need to truly sit in that emotion, but you also need to make the conscious decision to say, I have felt this long enough.
Right.
It has affected me long enough, and I will not let it win.
Yep.
right? And you need to move beyond that.
Yeah. Because we can't do anything living in the past. We have to be going in the future. But how do you explain that to someone who lost their 2-year-old child who, you know what I mean? Like, so.
But the truth of the matter though, is that there is no timeline on it.
No, not even a little bit.
Right. And so what might be right for the moment for this item is going to be very different for a different item.
Or a different circumstance. 100%.
Or even same circumstance, different person involved. Right. We all scale our mountains at a different pace.
Yep.
It's not important what the pace is. What's important is that we keep trying.
Absolutely. And it's also important to understand we will never have all the answers on why things happened.
No.
Like, I use an example, and it is a little bit of a personal example, but I'm going to share it here. I had a miscarriage. I want to say it was 2019, or it might have been 2018, but I think 2018 actually. So I was due in November, and in November, so I had the miscarriage in like March. It was very early on, but I was really, really upset because we had been trying for a bit, and like I knew I was pregnant. I was feeling all the symptoms, so I was really surprised when I miscarried, and so fast forward to November, I was working with Brianna Kelly still. We were at Village Mortgage, and we were looking to make a move potentially. And I got offered a salary position to stay at Village and head up a branch. Like, it would have been very consistent money. Wasn't like earth shattering, but like consistent. If I had a newborn baby at home,
you would have taken that.
I would have taken that.
Yep.
And it would have been something that maybe I wouldn't realize I regretted because I didn't know what was on the other side of it, but it was leaving there. And this is no offense to them as a company, was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my entire life.
Right.
Sure.
And
for your personal career path, it was the right choice.
It was like a catapult. It was like jumping on a trampoline. It was huge.
Yep.
And I don't know that would have happened had I had a little baby at home.
Sure. Yep.
And so for me, that was something I connected later on, and I'm like, whoa, but that's not always going to happen. No. You're not always going to know.
You're not going to see the simplicity of that in hindsight.
Right. You may have little like, oh, this makes sense now. Yeah. And those moments solidify my knowledge that everything happens with a purpose that I might never understand, and I might figure it out.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So one of going off of that, we moved to Maine, Jen and I, June of 2022. So it'll be 2 years this coming June. And the decision for that was to simplify our life because we had two homes. We had a house in Maine that we had purchased just before COVID, which when COVID hit, I thought it was the biggest mistake on earth. Yeah. And then I was proven very quickly otherwise. Right. And then we had our house in Lunenburg. And the house in Lunenburg, my mother-in-law was living with us. That time had kind of run its course. We, at that time we had been married 18 years, 9 of which my mother-in-law, or we were living with her. She was living with us, that kind of thing. And it just got to the point where we needed to shake things up because it just wasn't a good trajectory for our family. Yeah. And it wasn't so much necessarily my mother-in-law. It was just the dynamic of 2-home ownership. It was the dynamic of running back and forth. Vacation life was different from family life. It should have been one and the same. Right. And all of the stress of maintaining the two environments. We had some home repairs that we had to consider in both locations, and honestly, not enough money to do both. And so as a result, both suffered. Yep. Right. And so I am a firm believer in doing one thing and doing it well, but I wasn't living that life. Right. Right. And so it was a lot of back and forth for Jen and I to decide to move to Maine. I had made the mental decision personally much before she did. Yeah. And I spent 3 months trying to convince her of the right thing to do because I saw the writing on the wall. I knew what was involved for the repairs. I knew how it was impacting our life from a financial stress standpoint, from my mother-in-law living with us standpoint. The family dynamic wasn't healthy. So finally, an agreement was made. So we moved to Maine. And I thought that was the be-all, end-all reason for moving to Maine. What I didn't know was what the future would have for us. And that was for us to meet 2 amazing, remarkable individuals, Dan and Corrine, who've become such amazing friends. And Corrine's a life coach.
Ah, amazing.
And so she is a lot like you and I in regards to how she conducts herself through life and how she sees obvious writings on walls that other people might not see. And she's like, this is what we got to do, you know? And so seeing that example in another marriage, in another relationship, really spurred me on to to take a really solid look at my own marriage, my own lifestyle, how I was conducting myself. And it really started like ripping off everything got shredded. Like you wouldn't even believe. Yeah. The Band-Aids just all got shredded. And it all happened really fast. And at the time I'm like, oh, cool. Another path, another avenue. But looking back on it, I'm like, we moved to Maine for that experience. Yeah. We didn't know it at the time. Right. But that's exactly what we're lining ourselves up for.
I actually say that about Florida too. So everyone's like, why'd you move to Florida? What did you do? So I lived in Central Mass for 40 years, besides going to college for that 1 year. And I went to school at UMass Amherst, so I was pretty close. And I realized that even if I moved back today to Massachusetts, that everything that I went through in Florida would have been worth it, because over the last year, I quit drinking. And the reason I quit drinking, I don't know if I've told you the story, but I'll tell it really quickly. So I was at this convention for Hay House Publishing. So if you don't know Hay House, it's like Mel Robbins, Jim Quick, Gabby Bernstein. Awesome. They actually were all there at this conference.
Fantastic.
I had never heard of the conference. I heard of the books and I knew the authors. And my friend's like, oh, you must be going because it's in Tampa. And I'm like, I've never heard of this. It's called the I Can Do It conference. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm in Tampa. I might as well. I can just drive there. I'll just get a hotel for like a couple nights. I would never have gone to that conference if I didn't live in Tampa, because I wasn't interested in it enough.
Sure.
You wouldn't have flown.
It was too much of a commitment to make on a whim.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, so I was at the first day of the conference, and it was this guy by the name of John Holland, he's a psychic medium, and it was a class on mediumship. And I raised my hand and asked a question. I said, what's the difference between your ego or your intuition and God telling you something? Like, how do you know the difference, right? Sure. I have all these thoughts. Yeah. Who are they? Like, what do they mean? Yeah. And he said, the difference is your intuition will come back over and over and over again. Yes. And my first thought was, I got to quit drinking. That was my first thought. It was like, 3 PM on a Friday. I didn't have a drink from then on. I just decided. I did a whole big post about it. I was not what you would label an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm very candid about that because I think it's an important piece to talk about, because so many people feel like, why should I give up something I don't have an issue with or problem with, right? Okay. Right? For me, my problem was that I drank at times that I didn't necessarily care if I drank or not, but other people were doing it. So I just did it. No one pressured me. Like, I have a great supportive group of friends. If I had told them no, they wouldn't have cared. Sure. It was me. I was like, yeah, but everyone's drinking. I'm at a realtor event, whatever. That's weird. And I just realized I didn't really want to do that anymore, and I wanted to be more clear. So that was one thing. I would never have quit drinking without moving to Florida. So for me, the move was very much intuition versus like, here's why.
How long after you moved did that occur?
So I moved on March 11th, and that occurred on May 19th. Oh. Yeah. So it was pretty. Yeah. It was pretty significant. I also, and actually forgot about this. This was right before that. I also got an opportunity to do a comedy set, which, like, comedy has been something I've been interested in my entire life. I love being funny. I'm like, I'm hilarious. This is perfect for me. So I ended up like hiring this coach, and they were doing the comedy set in Tampa. It was for entrepreneurs. So there was like 6 of us involved, and I got to do a set on stage at the Tampa Improv, which is now, I think, called Funny Bone or something like that. But once again, I never would have participated if it wasn't in Tampa already. Right. Because it was an investment just to be part of the group. And then if I had to do hotel and airport, I just would have been a lot.
The opportunities that were presenting themselves around here paled in comparison to what you experienced very shortly in Florida.
So different, like wildly different. Yep. So, so that happened. And then I was part of a mastermind group already in Florida before I moved. And like, it ended up being that everyone was from this area. Like, I made a lot of connections. Yep. And I firmly believe that this is all from my move to Florida. Yep. Like, there's no way I would have got on stage at a comedy place, given up antidepressants, given up drinking. Like, I've done more in a year than some people do in their entire lives.
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
It's crazy. But I'm still figuring out who I am. Like, I moved down with the intention of, I'm going to create my coaching platform. I'm going to do retreats and workshops. I have done all this none of that. Yeah. Okay.
Can you tell us about your coaching? Yeah. Like, kind of how you got started. And I'm interested in that.
Well, it started by hiring my own coaches. So I started by hiring a mortgage related coach. And it was like, go to open houses. Here's some scripts. Here's processes, all that stuff. So it was great. Sure. And then I ended up hiring Brian Domaso, who is the gentleman I mentioned,
Yes.
committed suicide. And he had a program called Thinking into Results, which is Bob Proctor based. So it's kind of like a network marketing company where people can get licensed, if you will, to then share this material and coach people. And they go through a lot of steps to do that. And Brian was amazing, but what people didn't realize is there were certain shames that he was hiding and like never open with. So he taught me so much about my mindset and how to really like think about, the end results and what I really want to do and stuff. And I remember thinking, I want to coach people. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I have no idea what that means, but that's fine. And then I hired another coach who like really taught me to tap more into my intuition and stuff like that. I did some coaching for Total Mortgage. So they hired me. Sure. I did a workshop for them and stuff. And so really it was awesome, but I was like so anti coaching for mortgages. I don't know why. I still don't know why, but I'm sure it had its place.
What does that mean exactly?
I think I had done mortgages for a bit. I maybe was a little burnt out and I was like, I'm going to do coaching. It's going to have nothing to do with mortgages.
Yeah.
But,
okay. I see what you mean.
But in retrospect, I'm like really rethinking. And right now I'm like, you know what?
I could do that.
I'm like, Katie, I love you. And maybe we should be embracing your expertise. Right. Like you crushed it in mortgages.
Isn't it frustrating how we try to run away from the obvious?
Tried to run away. It was the obvious to connect everything. Yep. So I was telling her a minute ago that I'm actually combining my platforms. So I have 2 Instagrams right now. One has like 90 followers or something. And one has like 1,700. And I'm like, I'm going to create my platform to be all of me.
Sure.
Coaching, mortgages.
There's not 2 sides of you.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's how I love how I do business is like everything is intertwined. Yep. You know what I mean? Like I was talking to...
You get the whole package.
Yeah. I was talking to Kelly LaGrassa today and we're working with a client who's in a tough situation trying to buy a home from family. And it's a lot of moving parts. And this client happens to know that, listen, I never would have pre-approved you for this amount if you were just buying on the street, but I'm willing to put it in the work. I only get paid when you close on your house. Like this is kind of a Hail Mary-ish, but like I wouldn't be putting in the work if I didn't think that there was a way to get this done for you. But it's very stressful. Tears have flown. And I'm trying to think of where I was going with that. Oh, I remember. Like everything for me, I'm like, what was that? Okay, right, here it is. Everything for me meshes together and I love that. Yep. Like that's how I do business. If that's not how you do business, that's fine.
Correct.
But like if you are okay and love that everything meshes together, like I can help you figure out how to really embrace that because I don't mind that I could be at Disney and answer a call from a client. Like I like that. Other people hate it.
if you're in it for the right reasons.
Yes.
And that's the difference. I think a lot of us, we believe in this whole like never the two shall meet kind of approach.
Yeah.
Because we're not being
like balanced, you mean?
Yeah. Right. So the whole work-life balance myth, which is total BS.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's that we try to like, there's a door over there that's called work. And then on this side of the door, it's called life, personal life, everything other than work. Mm-hmm. They don't need to know about these people and these people don't need to know about that.
Yeah.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Very
of that incongruency where you're not living your whole life from A to Z on a day-to-day basis where both of them are mixed together like a good old melting pot of America.
Yeah.
If you're not truly going through those stages every single day to be your real person, your true self, then what you're doing is you're burning yourself out in the process.
Yeah, agreed.
Because you got
it's
this on,
exhausting.
off.
Exhausting.
And that's not a sustainable approach to anything. And that's what I was doing when I was living in Lunenburg.
Yep.
And it wasn't because of Massachusetts or because of clients. It was because of the way I was deciding to ignore living my life.
Yep.
And by living my life remarkably more simply, it's become remarkably more complex because I'm finding things out that I had just been shelving for so long. So when you go clean out the closet, it's going to be messy.
Yes.
So that's step number 1 for people who are undergoing change. Be ready for mess. Mm-hmm. But you need to also be ready to experience the catharsis or the cathartic experience that is cleaning up the mess.
Yep.
Because you start filing through your memories or you start filing through your life and you're like, why have I been holding on to that thing for so long? And then you start unpacking things and you're like, so these 5 boxes that I've been just carrying around with me every single time I've moved, figuratively, literally, have had absolutely no value, but they've weighed me down.
Yep.
Adios, gone. And so I'm a very regular listener of John Deloney. I don't know if you know
No.
John Deloney. All right. So he's part of the David Ramsey Network.
Oh, okay.
And so he's a 2-time PhD psychologist. And he does a podcast, and he every 2 days he releases a new episode.
Oh, wow.
And he's got 3 callers every 2 days. So really busy guy. And he's got this awesome conference that's happening in October called the Marriage and Money Conference. Him and Rachel Cruz. Rachel Cruz is David Ramsey's daughter.
Oh, okay.
So he's obviously getting on in years, David Ramsey. And so Rachel Cruz is going to be taking over the Ramsey Network. Anyway, long and short of it, though, is that John Deloney is so uplifting to listen to, because the advice that he's giving, very simple situations, can be applied to literally every area of your life. And maybe you're not struggling with the thing that the person who's calling in is struggling with.
Yeah.
But you either know somebody who is, or you can adapt that same advice to another area of your life. And it's all about embracing suckiness.
Yep.
Not running away from the obvious, real solution that's just lurking around the corner that you're just trying to like put away and evade. Because the longer you go through that evasion strategy, the harder it is once it does catch up with you, because it will catch up with you.
Absolutely.
Right. And so that whole like 2 life thing, it's the first thing that's got to go if you want to get out of the antidepressants, if you want to get out of the escapism.
Yep.
Because that's what we do, right? So like, oh, I don't want to take that call because I'm on vacation. Fine. If that's who you are, great. But if you're shutting it off because you can't be who you are on that phone while on vacation, well, then maybe that's a problem.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you're not just fully together all the time, and you have to have a start stop to your day because it's involving work, and work doesn't need to know about family, and family doesn't need to know about work, maybe that's a problem unto itself.
Yeah. Like that line, like, I'm done here, so don't answer or don't do something. While I do think that there's an importance to disconnecting sometimes.
Yes.
Because I was talking to Kelly LaGrassa today. We went to Oliver's for breakfast. And I said, I struggle sometimes, like with even just like having a day of like, putting up an out of office and a do not disturb on my phone, and like really being able to enjoy my family, because I want to make sure people are covered. And like, I like that.
It's who you are.
That doesn't mean I don't need it every now and again, but like in general, if I am, like I said, in Disney or in the Bahamas, I don't mind answering and being like, oh yeah, absolutely. Let me answer your questions. And if you need anything deeper, I can connect it with my team. Like I answer a lot of general questions for 5 minutes on the phone.
Yep.
And a lot of times that makes all the difference.
Yeah.
And I like that.
Yep.
Like, so, but it's hard sometimes for people to understand who are on the outside, like a husband or children who are like, Mom, you're always working. And I was like, that's because I love what I do. I don't want to tell them that's because I always have to work.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's how some people feel. It's like, no, but I really love what I do.
look forward to answering the phone.
Exactly. And I get to help people out. And so that's the message I want them to understand is like, I'm doing this because I want to.
Right. It's not driving me, I'm driving it.
Yes, 100%. So like, I love everything being meshy all together and lumped. I think it's important for people to get to know who you are when they do business with you, whether it be a realtor or a client. Like I love helping people. So I love that coaching aspect. So I really want to combine everything. So I'm going to be doing more coaching for Total Mortgage this year, which I'm really excited about,
Awesome.
but also just the partnerships I'm creating with realtors. I want to be more intentional. I want to be more of a resource for them, which obviously you guys are. Like that's what you do, is like you've created your empire here by partnering with agents to help them by
being their support system.
Yeah, it's more than just a picture.
No,
you know what I mean?
Of
a listing.
I tell this all the time. The picture is the product, but that's not what we're actually selling.
No.
What we're selling is the service.
Yep.
And you cannot put an effective price tag on the service that we deliver.
Yeah, the intangibles.
Right.
Yeah, and the relationships.
Yep.
Like,
in the fact that you're really just trying to help someone. Like I have a client who's buying a house right now, and the seller is second guessing selling. They're in pre-foreclosure. And so they're like, we don't know where we're going to go. No one wants to accept us as a tenant. So I made a post about it and said, can anyone, now I don't know landlord tenant laws. So
I saw that
that
post.
showed in my post because people were like, do not under any circumstance. I'm like, listen, I'm just asking a question. So I edited and said, listen, I know in Massachusetts, you can't accept all the money at once, but like, what are the options for these people? There's gotta be landlords out there who can give me advice, and I'm going to call an attorney later today. But the point of the story is like, I don't need to do that.
No.
I'm doing it because I want to see everyone get what works best for them. Because is it really best for that seller to let their house foreclose? when they leave all this money on the table.
Yeah.
So the point of what I'm saying is like, I really care about my clients, and what's best for me is that they close. I get paid on that. That's awesome. What's best for my client is that they close because they want to buy this house. What's best for the sellers is that they close because otherwise they're going to go into foreclosure, never know when they're going to have to leave their house. And this gives them control and money to be able to do something.
And that's the holistic view of it.
Yeah.
It's not about the transactional perspective. It's about what's good for the whole.
Yep. I ask myself that all the time. I say, what's good for me? What's good for you? What's good for us as a collective?
Right.
Yep.
And what people don't realize, I shared this story on my live the other night, but I'm going to share it again. So, the other night I was supposed to pick up my friend from the airport. She was flying in from Florida and I was in Boston, like near Boston already. And I was like, yeah, I can pick you up. And she's like, okay, my flight gets in at 3:30. I'm like, okay, no problem. The more I thought about it, I was like, oh, I don't want to really do that. And then I was like, oh shoot, I double booked.
P or A?
PM.
Okay.
But
I've
on a Friday, on a Friday, I'd actually rather, I think 3:30 a.m. on a Friday.
You say that.
I don't love traffic. Yeah. Boston on a Friday afternoon. Like I was like, oh, this was silly.
Boston.
Yeah,
Boston.
that's very
Yeah.
bad
Yeah.
idea.
So, and then I realized, oh my gosh, I double booked. So I was like, oh, thank goodness. And I think a couple years ago, I would have been like, nope, I'll just cancel my plans. I told her I'd pick her up. I'm going to be doing her a disservice. This is not fair to her. But all I said was like, hey, I totally forgot I had something booked. Like, am I putting you in a tough spot if I don't pick you up from the airport? Like, are you able to rent a car? Like, let me know either way, because we'll figure it out. And I just kind of like left it at that. And she's like, actually, I've been wanting to hang out with my niece who lives in Boston. So this works great because now I can meet up with her and hang out.
Win-win. Done.
Win-win.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because if you're thinking of something that's best for you, we tend to tell ourselves it's selfish, but actually it's most likely best for everybody involved. And like that being said, I wouldn't have left her in the lurch if she was like, it's a real burden for me. Like, is there any way you can pick me up? I would have said, no problem. But the way I approached it was like, ooh, this is kind of, and it turns out I had the wrong night for my other friend anyway. So it was like this whole thing. I was like, oh, well, I'm glad. I would never have canceled if I didn't think I had other plans.
So anybody knows a really good scheduling virtual assistant out there for Katie? Just kidding.
She's not, what's today? Thursday? Yeah. She's tomorrow night. It wasn't that Friday. But anyways, but the whole point is, like, that's what prompted me to ask her. But in reality, even if I just didn't want to do it anymore, like I would hope that I'm more evolved now and would just say something like, hey, I thought about it. I absolutely hate driving in Boston traffic. Would it put you like in a big pickle to get a ride or to...
Can we try to figure something else out?
Exactly. Yeah. Like most people don't want to have those conversations. Like, why?
No, I think it's because I think that we would rather fool ourselves into thinking that shouldering the burden is the more noble thing to do.
Yeah.
Because the truth of the matter is what ends up happening, and we don't realize this sometimes, is that through our own energy that we are participating in something that we don't want to be in, we're actually dragging down the situation, not actually lifting it up.
Yep.
And our absence from that thing that we don't want to be involved in is actually a lot of times a good thing.
Yeah.
And even though it looks like the hard decision of saying the no, because I hate saying no.
Yeah.
I'm not a good no sayer.
I'm working on it.
I've become a lot better at it. I will say that. By saying no, you're actually freeing the person to find somebody who wants to say yes.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Right?
Yeah, or you're saying yes to yourself.
Yeah.
Like a therapist told me that one time and I was like, that makes so much sense. Like by saying no to somebody else, you're actually saying yes to yourself.
Yeah.
And that's just as important some days.
And when you're saying yes to yourself, you're actually saying yes to everyone else. Like, because I believe that like we are a collective and that if
the yes to yourself is done in the manner of, I need to rejuvenate me so that I can help.
Right. It's not done in a selfish way.
That's the thing.
Right.
No, it's done in a way that like, it is a little hard to describe. And I use that example because years ago, I know that I would have never canceled on her.
Oh, for sure. You would have canceled your personal plans in favor
100%.
of that. Right?
And I would have struggled through it. I would have tried to pick her up at 4:00. I would have been in Boston traffic. I would have been cursing it. I would have been like, this is why I didn't want to do this, because I guarantee I would have attracted every possible piece of traffic that needed to come my way to affirm my thoughts.
Yes, 100%.
You know what I mean? Like we look for all of this proof of whatever it is we're thinking, and we're going to find it.
Yeah.
And so what are you looking for proof of? Like, is it something that's going to support you or something that's going to drag you down?
Like my friend Corrine says, what you focus on grows.
Oh yeah.
And including negativity. And if you focus on, I hate doing this, it's going to really feel a lot more like you hate doing it.
100%.
And all those proofs of concept are going to emerge all at once. And you're going to be like, see, this is why.
Yeah. And the knowledge of this doesn't mean that I don't do the same things.
Right.
There's years of programming and conditioning.
Sure. Oh, programming.
Like, those things, those are running their course. Yep. And so I'm still learning.
And these stories and these scenes that play in your head all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And so we have our narrative. We just, keep churning over in our head. And it's not necessarily like voices, but it's your own internal voice telling you, you should be doing X, Y, Z. Why aren't you doing X, Y, Z? There's that guilt, that
and we're
shame,
shaming ourselves. Yeah.
Right? And we have to break free from that in order to truly be the best business individuals that we can become.
Yep.
Right. And
absolutely.
So the goal of this podcast is to really focus on who we are as individuals and how that has translated to us as professionals. And because it's not a never the two shall meet. Yep. It is literally a both and.
Yeah.
And that's, what we're trying to encourage here for our viewers is to embrace who they are as real people and carry that on to who they are as real businesses, marry the two together so that there is this congruency between their daily life and their professional life, their home life and their professional life, so that we can become better at what we do.
Yep.
And less burnout.
Yeah.
Right.
And I would encourage, it's so easy to get burnt out. And I would also encourage people to be open to other people's feedback, good or bad.
Yeah.
A lot of people just get so angry.
Closed.
And I ask people, I try to be conscious of that. And I say, are you open to feedback related to this?
Sure.
Most of the time they say yes because of people I'm surrounding myself with, but sometimes they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, no problem.
Yep.
In like business, you're talking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I'm catching something that they might not realize. It's a lot easier for me to recognize in other people something that is underlying in what they're doing by what they say.
Yeah. I mean, that takes a lot for you to do that too.
Yeah.
But that's awesome.
It's because I'm like, I feel like this could be helpful for them. Is that something they want to understand and know more about?
Right. And it's not that you're looking to micromanage or perfect.
No.
It's that you're looking to say, have you given consideration to this thing over here?
Yeah.
And a lot of times, and this is where like accountability partnership, right?
Yes.
A lot of people are lacking accountability partners. And whether it be in their marriage, in their child rearing, in their business management, in how they conduct themselves from an HR standpoint, there's a lot of reasons that we need these accountability partnerships, whether it be like the guys group meetings. Yep. I myself am part of a men's group up in Maine.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I have to say, and I'm going to say this, I'm not loving it. And the reason why is because I'm finding that the guys that I'm in the group with are they're still so closed up that they don't know how to talk on the real basis of here's my soul, here's my heart, here's my mind. I'm going to put them on the table so that you can truly read me, A to Z. And I'm asking you to do the same. So if one of us is doing that, but not the rest of us, I'm the guy who does it.
Right.
And then we be vulnerable like that, and the other people don't know how to receive that vulnerability and also return it give it back in return. Mm-hmm. It's a very one-sided conversation that ends up happening.
Yeah.
So you just go spill, and people are like, "Oh, that kind of sucks." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's not what I was looking for, guys."
That's definitely not.
You know what I mean? And so that's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
And so what people need to realize is that what they need to realize is that we do need these accountability partners who truly have our best interest at heart.
Yep.
And I think that's probably the hardest part is determining who does have, in fact, your best interest at heart, or is who's just looking out for themselves. Do you come across that?
Not as much anymore.
Okay.
And
why do you think that is?
I'm on a different frequency than that.
Got it.
And so it's possible I'm just not noticing it anymore.
All right.
It's possible that they're not around me because I'm in a different frequency.
Yep. You're elevating yourself to a different level. Yep.
Yeah. So and if for some reason I'm at the grocery store and, something comes up, I just go, oh, that's really interesting. Yep. And I don't give it much energy. I'm just like, okay. It used to be that I was like, that was so weird. Mm-hmm. I'll give you an example. I was at the grocery store and the lady was like, she was talking to herself and she's like, I talk to myself all the time. See, I'm doing it now. And I was like, oh, okay. But maybe like 2 or 3, probably more like 3 or 4 years ago, I might've been like, that was so weird. Why was she talking to herself like that? And I would have judged her.
Yep.
And now I was like, oh, that was really interesting. But okay.
Yeah.
And I wasn't saying it from a way of I'm judging her silently. And it really was like just me processing it like, oh, okay. And I asked my friend about this. I asked Jan about this the other day. I said, what I'm noticing is I'm not judging other people anymore, but I'm getting very judgy of my family and myself. Oh. And she said, yeah, it's kind of like a tractor beam. You start with the outside and then as you evolve more, it's coming closer and closer to you. And I'm like, oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Because her kids were judging kids at school for like, stupid things like their t-shirts hanging out of their sweatshirts or the socks tucked their sweatpants in, all silly stuff. So they were like sharing, they're like, oh, you know what I hate? I hate when, sweatpants are tucked into socks. Like they were just being silly, right?
Socks and sandals, socks and slides, t-shirts tucked into sweatpants. Yeah. I could go on. Yeah, go ahead, continue.
So they were just talking about that. And I was like, oh, I just think that's like really interesting. It doesn't bother me. And I was like, I wonder why that is. And so she said that. And I was like, this makes so much sense. Like I didn't realize like we in general as a society are just a very judgy society. Yeah. And social media kind of perpetuates that because
kind of. Come on.
That's a nice way of saying it. Social media kind of what was the word I just said? Perpetuates this. Because we're constantly comparing and judging other people.
It's a blower motor on a fan on flames. Okay, that's what it is.
Okay, that's a great way of describing it. So in answer to kind of like regroup and go back to your question, I don't notice that as much. And if I am noticing it more, it's because my frequency has shifted. And that's something I try to pay attention to because I'm like, okay, this is coming up more and more. I'm around people who are all bitching about something or another. Like, what does this mean for me to pay attention to?
Sure.
And then there's other times where it's like, I am in a circle or like, I feel like everything's falling into place. That person's saying hi to you as you walk by them in the donut place or, I go for walks every day. My neighbors at first, like no one was even waving. And I'm like, I think this is actually a me thing. Like, what is it? And now I'm like, hey, like, I'm like crazy about it. I'm like overly waving. Like maybe they didn't see me and they should see me.
Sure. Yeah.
But I also think that like people, it's literally like a magnet. Like you're attracted to people who are similar to where you're at.
For sure.
And so, and that's why when you have it, I used to say, my down days like spiral out of control. Sure. Like my bad days, it was like that happened to you all in one day. It was everything, it was like I woke up late and missed my alarm and then I dropped my breakfast on the floor.
When it rains, it pours.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that was, and when I was on a good trajectory, it was like, holy crap, this was the best freaking day of my life.
Yep.
And what I realized is like, it was because of the energy that I was in at that time. Sure. And so I'm really conscious about just keeping my energy steady and learning from things as I go and saying, okay, all right, like being separated from what that is. So I don't see that as much.
Is there a technique that you try to use on days that maybe don't start well or have an interruption to it where it has that propensity of knocking you off course?
Yes. I like to take a step aside. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go outside. I like to get grounded. So I'll take off my shoes. I'll put my feet in the dirt. I'll meditate for like 5 minutes.
I love how you can do that in Florida.
You could do that here. It would just be a little chilly.
It would be a little bit icy sometimes.
Yeah, there's snakes though, and like other things that we should probably pay attention to. So whatever it is, I'll take a step out. So one of my favorite sayings is, you cannot solve a problem in the same frequency in which the problem was created. And so if something's going on with a file, for example, sometimes I very easily see the solution. So I'm like, oh, that's no big deal. This is this. Sure. Sometimes I'm like, ooh, okay, I need a minute on this one. And I literally like take a step back.
Yep.
Sometimes I'll just stand outside with my shoes on, like in the sun. I'll just take a deep breath. I'll play a 5-minute meditation on YouTube. Like I just need to take a minute aside, and that tends to really regroup. Or I'm just really honest about where I am. I'm like, I'm really overwhelmed right now, and I need a minute to just kind of collect myself.
So I'm gonna try to go a little bit. I'm gonna try to bring it back just a little bit more.
Sure.
Because the way that you're speaking about this is that you're deeply involved in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the benefit of those listening who might not have rounded that corner in life where they're even aware that they need a minute. Let's get to that real quick, if you don't mind.
Sure.
What brought you to the conclusion or to the solution, if you would, that you were consciously recognizing when you did need a minute? And therefore, how did you get to that point where you caught yourself before you forgot to catch yourself? Does that make sense?
It does. And
right? Like there's a level of awareness that has to happen in order for you to identify when you need a minute. Where did that level of awareness come from? Is that something that you
I think it came from having coaches who walked me through that.
Yep.
So I do think that even someone just listening to this story right now could probably start to identify the moments that they need to take a step aside.
Okay.
And it's just the awareness of that. Like just knowing, okay, if I feel like things are getting out of control, I should start thinking of taking a step aside.
Right. It's like the anxiety triggers.
Yeah, exactly.
When you start feeling anxiety growing, and because it's not always a constant.
Mm-hmm.
There are some situations that make it flare up, so to speak.
Yep.
When you feel that moment starting to occur, you need to interject. You need to throw that wrench in the gears and be like, whoa, we're holding the presses just for a second here.
Yep.
I'm going to bow out of this conversation for 10 minutes.
Yep.
Go grab myself a coffee, and I'm going to bring myself to a spot where I am ready to have this conversation.
Yeah. One of the first things I did too, and my team knows I do this, some people do, but I have an alter ego and her name is Vicky. So if I'm getting out of control and other people are recognizing it, they'll be like, Vicky, do you want to
Is this a total mortgage thing? Because Brianna has an alter ego too.
Well, we talked about it because I'm like, you have to have an alter ego. It takes the energy away from.
Okay.
And so I came up with Vicky. And so, and my team doesn't normally use this.
I almost just lost my water.
Yeah, they did use it one time a couple of weeks ago. They were just like, does Vicky need a minute? And I'm like, Vicky needs a minute. Okay. And I'm like, I'll call you back. Because it takes the energy away from that like anger and like the spiraling. It is so easy to spiral, especially in our industry, like just the things that can come up sometimes.
And because it really is a lot of minutia that's just like getting piled on top of each other.
And it's these big life experiences. I have people who are buying a house, selling a house, like whatever.
But it's all details that are all fixable.
Everything is figure outable, right? That I know that's a book. I've never read it, but I say it all the time. Everything is figure outable.
Yep.
It is. It really is. Yep. Like, does that mean the outcome is going to be what we expect? Not necessarily, right?
You can't be married to the outcome.
Nope. But yeah, so having an alter ego, and my husband also knows this. So like the joke is, I'm like, you can use that. Like if I'm getting out of hand or like getting too judgy, I can be very judgy of him. Mm-hmm. I can be very micromanagey, and I'm like really struggling with, how do I not be micromanaging, but not like totally just don't give any guidance with all the knowledge that I have? Like, I don't know. So I'm kind of like, I retreat, and then
it's a gradient.
Yeah, it really is. And we're working to try to figure that out.
Yeah.
My poor husband, my poor husband. That's all I have to say, because I've been so controlling. And so like, that's how I built my business, was I had to keep control of everything. And I'm realizing that's not necessarily how I want to live. So it's like, okay, how do I write the serenity prayer, right? God, give me
we just said that yesterday.
Yep. Yeah, the serenity prayer.
We just said that.
It's huge.
It is huge.
And so he has permission to call me Vicky if he feels like I'm getting out of hand and I need to think about it. Yep. I'm like, okay, because he could recognize it before me. So maybe that might be a fun way for someone to start.
But
it could be interesting.
But that could go wrong. I feel.
Well, so there needs to be parameters on something like that, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
So similarly, we have we've dispensed with it, unfortunately, because it got overused. We came up with a solution for when we were having anger management problems with some of our kids. Purple hippopotamus.
Okay.
And so when we detected that there was like this blowout starting to occur, we said purple hippopotamus. And what that meant was, we're done for a moment. We're going to take 5, take 10, take whatever we need. We're going to back off and we're going to reapproach this at a more settled in time. Mm-hmm. And what happened was, my oldest decided to pull purple hippopotamus whenever she felt like it on our second oldest. And it got overused to the point where it had no meaning anymore. Yeah. Right. And so very similarly, your husband has to understand, and I'm sure that he does, that Vicky can't just be used as a playing card all the time.
And he rarely does.
And that's the important part. So there needs to be,
extremes.
And there has to be a good energy behind it, right? He can't be like, okay, Vicky, he has to be in a place where, like, usually what happens is one of us is like angry and the other one is kind of like, what's happening right now?
Ooh, that's a good balance.
Yeah. So it does work well. Yeah. So like, he can be like, okay, Vicky, I'm not like like, does Vicky need a minute? And he can kind of make a joke about it in a good energy to where I'm not taking it defensively.
So long as that's understood.
Yes,
right?
100%.
And that's the most important part about all of that method is that you understand that when he's using it in earnest.
Yes.
And that he knows.
Everyone has to have good intentions.
Correct. Exactly. Yep. And so we have to honor our significant others. And honestly, it's even in workplace too, right? Yep. Like if we're giving our coworkers the permission to do the same thing, we all need to have the mutual agreement that that's the process that we follow.
Yep.
Right. Because if somebody deviates from that mutually agreed upon method, it's going to wreck the system.
Yep.
Because otherwise the system doesn't mean anything.
No, 100%. I agree with that.
What's the point of rules if it's not being followed?
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that we need to really look at our approach to how we conduct ourselves when we aren't the one that's being emotional, right?
Yep.
If somebody is truly like deep in their feelings, we also need to be mature enough to stay out of that feeling pool until we insert ourselves in a very strategic manner, not in an undermining, malicious way.
100%.
Because we just end up stirring the pot even bigger.
Yeah, definitely. Right? One of my coaches, actually, she has a practice that I haven't implemented, but I love the idea of, and I want to share it. So a couple of quick things. One, instead of using the word but, we use the word and which I noticed you used a lot. So I figured that someone taught you that. So when we use the word but, it negates what comes after it.
For me, it was a KW start.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So when we use the word but, it negates what comes after it, right? I love you, but you're killing me right now.
Yep.
I love you, but I want to throw you out a window. Right. It loses everything.
Both and.
Right. So what would happen if you say, I love you, and I kind of want to throw you out a window right now? Like, it is a different energy.
Yep.
So the other piece of it is that
it becomes a modifier to your feelings, not a negation of your feelings.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I use the word and all the time. Yep. And I did the other day when I couldn't meet up with my friend. I was like, I was really looking forward to it. Like, I miss you. And like, I really hope that we can figure something else out kind of thing. But if I had said, but, she would have felt differently on the other end too. Sure. So that's one piece. And then the other piece is, this coach, she actually will replay the activity or the event in which things went awry. So let's just say,
don't you sometimes wish there was like a secret camera somewhere where you could like review your footage?
Right. Oh, I don't want to know. Cause I'm like, I wonder what I looked like. Just then.
How quickly I would change as an individual if that was the case?
Oh yeah. I actually do. I do watch my lives, because I want to hear what I'm saying outside of, I listen. So whenever I record something to my coach, I listen to it again later. Whenever I do a live, I always rewatch it.
Interesting.
Because you see things that you might not have realized before.
Because you were feeling in the moment and you had that spark. And sometimes that spark came from a good place at the moment. Yeah. But when you think about it in hindsight, you're like, Yeah.
It works especially well in my coaching groups because I'm, ego. 100%. Because I can hear something very clearly in a client of mine who I'm coaching. Yeah. But in myself, I miss it. And so when you're replaying, it's like, ooh, I see what I said there.
We are horrible sounding boards.
Yeah, 100%.
Do you rewatch your podcasts?
I don't. I
was curious.
For a couple of reasons. One, I really dislike the way that I sound.
And so that's you have a great voice.
Well, thank you. Yeah. But for me, I just don't like the way I sound. And I know that you sound different to everybody else except for yourself. Yeah. But that's hard for me to overcome. And then the other part is my life is exceptionally busy to the point that if I took a moment to go do that, I have this, and this is my own narrative issues. I am not being productive. Right. And not to say that there is no benefit to watching, because you're outlining the benefit right now.
Yeah. That's
or listening even. You don't necessarily need to watch it, but maybe listen.
Right. And I spend a good amount of time in my car. Yeah. I also enjoy really ingesting or absorbing information from other people so that I can think more critically about my approach to life.
You might be blown away by what you hear when you re-listen to yourself. Okay. I was blown away. It started because I was like, did I say everything I needed to say to my coach to have her give me an answer? And I was blown away by what I heard. So it started very organically.
Did you say, what the hell, Katie?
I was like, whoa, I asked a question, but it was just a whole realization of what I really needed to know. It wasn't really the question I was asking. So the way I heard it was so different than the way I was presenting it. And I realized that in the replay. And so that's why I started listening. Because then I can also elaborate too. Oh, wow, this is really interesting. This just came up when I re-listened because so I've been doing this thing called The Awakening it was a group coaching program. And what I did was I channeled for 4 weeks. I did Monday through Friday and I channeled with God and shared a message to the group. The point of it was not necessarily the message that came to the group. It was what it brought up for you.
Yeah.
Because it was different for everyone.
Sure.
Like someone would reach out and they'd be like, oh my God, yeah, this reminded me of my relationship with whatever. And I was blown away by this. And it was like, oh, I never would have taken that from this message, but cool. Because that's what it's meant for. And so same thing when you're listening to yourself, your first thought is actually going to tell you what you really should be paying attention to. And it's mind blowing. It's really awakening. So I know that you may feel like you might not have enough time, but I would be really curious to see what your thoughts are.
Truthfully, you make time for what's a priority.
Yeah, 100%.
And so what you're telling me is, Jeremy, make yourself a priority.
Yeah. And what I also found was that over time, after like watching my replays and stuff, I started to love what I was doing.
Okay.
Because at first I was really judgy of it. Like, oh my God, my hair is like sideways. So I have all these like little hairs. And so one day my hair was back and literally this piece is sticking out straight sideways. And I'm like, how did I not realize that on the video? And I was really judging myself. And then it happened that like something similar. And I was like, oh my God, that's so funny. Do you see my hair? Like, but I didn't give it any energy. So I realized I started to judge myself less as well, because I started watching myself as if I were someone else. Right? So Don't we say we want to treat others the way we would treat ourselves?
Yeah.
Or sorry, treat ourselves the way we would treat others.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same. Like when I was watching it, I realized I was looking at myself as if others were looking at me.
You golden ruled yourself. Yeah,
I did kind of, right?
Okay.
I didn't even think about it.
That's
but yeah,
good.
so really quickly to go back to what my coach does. So let's say there's one night where, she worked a long day, had a lot of clients, her husband's out of work. He was supposed to make dinner and he's like, can you make dinner tonight? And she's like, are you freaking kidding me? I worked just as hard as you did. You're supposed to make dinner. And she didn't like the way she reacted. And she would say, can we redo that? And like literally it creates the neural pathways over the previous version. And that's what you feel like the memory now is.
When are they redoing it? In the moment, at the end of the argument, or?
So she said it could be different because that was a question I asked similarly. It could be the next day.
Okay.
So like go back to where they were and he asked her the same question again and she answers in a way that she wished she had responded the first time.
Yep.
So she has to reap. So imagine if we did that with our kids.
That's high value.
Like that's really what got me. I was like, oh my God, I can do this with my daughters, right? Because there's times when they're like,
how old is Lexi?
So Lexi's 9 and then Juliana's 3. Okay. And I was like, wow, imagine, there's times Lexi will come into my office and I'm like, I'm doing a recording, I'm working. Like, why did you come into my office? And she's like, oh my God. And I'm like, imagine if I was like, hey, I don't love how I just reacted. I was a little overwhelmed in the moment.
Right.
Can you go back out and come back in and let's do that over again?
So you have to be the person who's self-aware. You're not like calling out the other person. Like you need to do that again.
Well,
like,
no, I feel like it could actually go either way.
It could go both ways, so long as the other individual knows of the situation.
Right, exactly. I think if I said to my husband, like, I don't love the way that interaction went, he would probably realize that, like, I didn't either.
Sure.
And so I think it could go the other way if you approach it with caution.
Yeah. But there needs to be a previous conversation. You can't do that in the moment.
No, so, I think you would have agreed that you're going to bring this up and try to redo things as they come up. Yes. Just similar to calling me Vicky. Like you can't just be like, can you redo that? That was brutal.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's not going to work.
Yeah. Like a mutual respect.
I need an alter ego name.
Yeah.
I need an alter ego name. We don't have to decide on it right now.
We'll have to come up. Well, should we leave it to the viewers to come up with your alter ego name?
This isn't going to air for about a month, so that's a long time to wait.
Oh yeah, we need something.
But yeah, we'll work on it.
Yeah,
we'll work on it.
I love having an alter
Katie,
ego.
this is a really awesome conversation.
Thank you.
I'm loving the topics that we're discussing, and the energy that you're just embodying.
Thank you.
So. I'm going to do a hard switch here. We're going to grab one of these cards here.
Okay.
And see what we come up with for a question.
Yeah.
You get one veto. Okay. So if you read the card and you're like, not resonating, you can pick a second and we can go from there.
Okay.
Read it out loud for our audience.
Looking ahead to the upcoming year, which habit do you want to carry into the next year?
Okay. So we can just talk about,
Sure.
from last year, into this following summer market or whatever.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be a New Year's, resolution kind of thing. So,
I mean, for me, the biggest habit I'm carrying with me is my walks. So I started at half a mile, then 1.5 and 2. So I really want to keep going and building on it. So maybe not necessarily distance wise, but speed wise. Right now, I've been walking really slow. And so I want to just build on that habit. I'm out there, I'm walking.
And you're walking.
And I'm walking. Yes. Thank you for acknowledging that. So
that's awesome.
So that's a habit that really I've wanted to carry into next year. I feel like that was so easy question.
That was a really easy one.
Can we pick one more?
Yeah, we can.
I don't know. I know you might not normally pick more than one, but
no, we're good with that. Let's just go one deep there.
Okay. Oh, this is really interesting. So it's the same type of category.
Oh.
Looking ahead to the upcoming year, what is one thing that would make your year great? For me, my big focus is health. So releasing more excess weight would make it a great year.
I love the way that you just phrased that.
Yep.
Say that one more time for everybody.
Releasing excess weight.
I really enjoy that phrasing.
Yeah. I don't want to lose weight. Do you know what happens every time I lose something?
It comes back.
I find it.
Yeah.
Because that's the goal. It's to find something you lost.
Yeah, I like that a lot too.
Yeah.
Releasing excess weight. That's good.
That's been a huge focus of mine. And the reason I say it that way too is I don't know what my ideal weight is. I don't know where my body's going to be happiest and healthiest.
Sure.
And so for a long time, it was like, I need to lose 100 pounds. And it was like, wait a minute. I don't even know what that means. So
we can't even picture ourselves at 100-pound weight loss or 50-pound weight loss. I
luckily can because I'm an identical twin. So it's actually really easy for me.
So you're in a very small category.
I have a little bit of a what do they call that? Like, I feel like that's, it's like a secret weapon almost because my twin sister she's probably, I won't say her weight necessarily, but maybe between 130, 140 pounds, maybe more if she is, I don't know. But I can see almost exactly what I would look like.
That's interesting.
As I release this
Not many of us have a peek behind that curtain.
Well, we do have AI though.
I am very hesitant to experiment with that. I gotta be honest with you. We try to, as best as possible, avoid that in the photography industry.
Oh, I completely agree. Right. Like AI headshots, I did them like to see what they were, and I just like it's not. Same with filters. Like I'm anti-filter, and some people that I'm around hate that. Yep. I'm like, are we using a filter? Could we take it off? And they're like, why do you not want the filter? And I was like, because I want to see who I am.
I'm me.
Because you're being real.
Be amazing. Yeah. I know it's an odd concept, but people who use filters religiously hate not using filters.
Right. Because their masked view of life, their adjusted view of life has become their reality.
Absolutely.
And so when they see the true reality, which is that what they consider to be ugliness, they don't see the beauty in the in the reality.
Yep.
And you have to live within that beauty of reality. You have to.
Yep.
If you don't, you're again back to the previous conversations, you're going to forever be evading something that you can't evade.
Absolutely.
Right.
And you're going to expend so much energy doing so that instead of being who you could be, you're going to be some other version of it.
100%. Like I really had struggled at first, like when I posted a selfie without makeup or anything like that. And I'm like, I don't need makeup, like, because I got used to it. I was like, I look great. That's fantastic. And like, I truly changed how I looked at myself once I stopped using something like a filter or putting on a ton of makeup. That doesn't mean I don't like to wear makeup and, feel my best. It just means that I'm okay with either version.
Yeah. You don't have to.
You know what you look like?
Yeah. What?
Happy.
Yeah, I am happy.
And that's the most important part.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yep.
And if you allow that to bleed into everything that you do, it just raises you up even higher.
Yeah.
And we're so programmed to chase this perfection that is just not attainable because we saw someone else do it and therefore we have ourselves convinced that we can do it too.
Yep.
And the difference is that they did it their way for themselves for some other reason that you don't know about. And they probably chased somebody else too. And so this like domino effect of people chasing people, instead of just simply somebody saying, no, stop, I'm going to take my domino out of this lineup and I'm just going to be over here by myself doing my own thing. And all of a sudden you have other dominoes that decide, oh my goodness, there's that individual domino over there. Let's see what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they're not falling, and we are, because they had that wherewithal to get themselves out of that pre-programming.
Yep.
And how glorious is that?
Yep.
It might feel lonely at first, but as soon as
I went through that season. I'm still kind of going through that season, but
sitting down here with you,
yeah.
Oh my goodness, I feel like now there's like this group.
Yeah.
I feel like I have people now.
Yeah.
And you live in your own echo chamber for so long, and you have yourself convinced that you're the only person that's going through this.
Yep.
You're not.
Yeah. This is really interesting, but I hate the phrase marry the house, date the rate. And it's a very unpopular opinion. It's a very unpopular opinion. There's like, well, that's what they're doing. I'm like, this is why it doesn't feel right for me, right? For me, I'm telling a client that their rate is going to change when I don't know that that's the case. Mm-hmm. And so I just tell clients like, listen, if you can be comfortable with the house that you're buying at the payment that you're paying, know that if the opportunity arises to get something lower and improve it over time, we're gladly going to help you with that. That being said, you should not rely on it. And I can't even imagine the amount of people who bought a house last year and their lender was like, marry the house, date the rate. And that's okay that they said that. That's, how they felt.
It's neither here nor there.
Right. But like, I have a strong reaction that's like unusual for people in my industry, because they're like all touting this. And I'm like,
right. Because it's the way to grease the skids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
For me, it's like, okay, well, I want to make sure you're comfortable as is.
Yeah, it's more of a moral issue for you. Like,
for me, that's why it doesn't feel right, because to me, that's
right.
giving a perception of like, I know rates are going to go down. I know they're going to go down eventually. Mm-hmm. I have no idea when that's going to be.
Yep.
I also don't know how much they're going to go down. I also don't know what's going to happen with values. I mean, I believe values actually will keep trending upwards, but like there's so many things that are out of my control.
There's some likelihoods that you can look at and say, probabilities are there. However.
Yes, exactly.
Right? However, if you took that same terminology and applied it to relationship, it would destroy itself immediately.
Oh yeah.
Because nobody is like, marry the girl, date her family. No.
That's right.
No. Because the truth of the matter is her family's not changing.
That sounds for an awkward Christmas party.
Yeah, right? Right. Like maybe you can hope that her family will warm up to you or that, the dynamic might shift or whatever. You can hope.
Yeah.
But you have absolutely no control over it. Just like a homeowner has no control over the actual rate that they embark on.
Right.
They don't have control over the company that they work at. And therefore their job status and their income. Oh yeah. They have some control over the direction of their career if they truly have that, interest and the energy and the vigor to pursue it.
Yep.
However, there are so many things that are outside of our control as humans that we have to make decisions based on the facts that we know now, not the best possible outcome for the future.
Yes.
Because if you work on that situation, you will find yourself on the receiving end of a negative outcome.
Agreed.
You will.
Yep. I don't know what got me on that tangent. I kind of float around a little bit.
No, that's okay. That's all right. It truly is. It truly is how we pick our path in life. Mm-hmm. And I think that we just need to continually look for ways that we can improve ourselves compared to our old selves.
Yeah.
And not go chasing some other idea that somebody else put out there. We just need to take a hard look at how we live our lives and be better tomorrow than we were today.
Yep. And there's a saying, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Exactly.
So true.
And it's not growing compared to other people.
No.
It's growing compared to you.
Yep.
And that's what we have to keep remembering. Mm-hmm. So I've really enjoyed sitting with you.
Yeah, this was such a pleasure.
Me too. Me too. It was awesome.
So thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. This was so much fun.
We're going to have to do it again.
Sounds great. Sure. I can't wait for my podcast too. So maybe I'm going to be doing mine via Zoom. So I will absolutely have you on mine. So It's going to be called, wonderful. I told her this earlier, but it's going to be called Mortgages, Mocktails, and Motherhood.
Ooh,
yeah. Hey. I hope that's what it's going to be called. I got to make sure it's not taken, I guess.
I think
that's a complex enough title where it probably wouldn't be.
Yeah, me too.
And you can just go, Yeah. Mortgage, mocktails, motherhood.
Yes.
I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah.
I'm excited for you.
Me too. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie.
All right.